Today we are looking at Genesis chapter 41, and we're just going to finish up what we started on last week. And we're looking at this story, and we've seen how Joseph now, as we've watched this migration from Adam to Noah to Abraham to Isaac to Jacob, and now we're following the family of Jacob mainly through the storyline of Joseph. Jacob will come into the picture again a little bit later on in a few more chapters. But we're looking at Joseph's situation and keeping in mind that Joseph was the individual that had those dreams. God put into his heart that he was going to have something significant going on. And he told the dreams to his family, and his father was kind of like, well, what are you trying to say? We're going to be bowing down to you? And the brothers were jealous of him because those dreams indicated at a certain point in time he would have rulership over them, and him not being the oldest. Joseph had a lot of hardship too. He had to learn to deal with disappointment. If you remember that Joseph was the firstborn son of Jacob and Rachel. And so Rachel was the wife that Jacob really loved. He ended up with Leah first, and for a great period of time, Rachel could not have any children. So eventually she did. And then the second child that was born to Rachel was Benjamin, but Rachel died. So Joseph's mother, his natural mother, died, giving birth to his youngest brother. Then plus with Jacob, Rachel was the favorite, and because of that, there was a lot of jealousy. There was all kinds of jealousy going on. Good morning.
Hello, family. How y'all doing? I was just out because Gabby, I told you she had the surgery.
Right. All right.
Well, I'm working around the clock for it.
All right. Well, we're gonna catch up on that in a little bit. So we had a situation where Joseph we're in Genesis 41. Where Joseph was looked at by the brothers as being, you're the favorite, and that produces what? A lot of jealousy. And they ended up wanting to what? Kill him. And they didn't decide not to kill him. They threw him in the pit. Then they said, well, we're going to sell him. We get some money for him. And then now Joseph is being sold. He was sold to the Ishmaelites. And the Ishmaelites took him down to Egypt and sold him to Potiphar. So while he's working there for Potiphar as a slave, Potiphar recognized that, well, he's a great administrator. And that's one of the things we talked about. A lot of times we think when God gives you gifts, that your gifts are like, well, you got to be like, changing water into wine or something spectacular. But Joseph's gift was a gift of what? Administration. Joseph knew how to get things accomplished. And so when he came in and he had to run Potiphar's circumstance, he got it all squared away. And next thing you know, Potiphar's like, this man does things so well, I'm going to let him run it off. Potiphar's wife also liked him. And then she tried to get him to lay with him. And he wouldn't do it. But then she lied on him and said, well, he tried to. And I remember the story. And with that, Potiphar, when he came home and she told him to lie, and you kind of feel he maybe didn't really believe it, because if he really believed it, he probably would have had Joseph put to death. Yeah. But instead, he had Joseph thrown into the prison. And then while he was in the prison, the captain of the guards down there saw that Joseph was so good at administration, he let him run everything down there. So his gift was always what? Making room for him. That's something that the Bible talks about, isn't it? All right. So now, while him down there, he saw two people that were thrown in there by the king, and the next thing you know, they are down there, and they have a dream. And then Joseph interprets their dream, and he tells them, well, when you come out, remember me, because part of one person's dream was you're going to get set free in 3 days. The other guy's dream was interpreted as you're going to be put to death in 3 days. And that's exactly what happened. Well, then we're at the point now here where Pharaoh, the king, has a dream. Now, through all of this stuff that was going on with Joseph, there was one thing, that was significant that kept being said by the narrative. It kept being said, and the Lord was what? Was with Joseph. So when he got sold by his brothers, it said the Lord was with him. When he was lied on by Potiphar's wife, it said the Lord was with Joseph. And so that's an interesting concept to have in mind, that when things are not going the way you think they should go, that does not mean that what? God's not with you. So we have to try to remember that and try to bring that into our lives and into our circumstances, that God is with us even sometimes when we're having a tough time or a bad day or struggling. That does not mean that God has forsaken you. And the key is, have you forsaken God? See, that's what happens a lot of times. People get mad with God because things are not going the way they think they should go, and then they walk away. I'm done with this. I'm not serving the Lord because it's not working for me. So we think. When really, no, it is working, because you got to let God work it out. But letting him work it out, you may go through something similar to Joseph. Hated by your family, put into a position of lowly circumstances, lied on, incarcerated incorrectly, all that stuff. But yet, God's with you. All the stuff that just happened to you, you're going to tell me God's on your side? Yes. And sometimes we have to remember that, and we can easily forget it. All right, so let's take a quick look one more time through Genesis 41, and then we'll kind of go through what we already went through, and we'll finish it up. Let's take a listen.
And it came to pass at the end of 2 full years that Pharaoh dreamed, and behold, he stood by the river. And behold, there came out of the river 7 well-favored kine and flat-fleshed, and they fed in a meadow. And behold, 7 other kine came up after them out of the river, ill-favored and lean-fleshed, and stood by the other kine upon the brink of the river. And the ill-favored and lean-fleshed kine did eat up the 7 well-favored and fat kine. So Pharaoh awoke, and he slept and dreamed the second time. And behold, 7 ears of corn came up upon one stalk, rank and good. And behold, 7 thin ears, and blasted with the east wind, sprung up after them. And the 7 thin ears devoured the 7 rank and full ears. And Pharaoh awoke, and behold, it was a dream. And it came to pass in the morning that his spirit was troubled, and he sent and called for all the magicians of Egypt and all the wise men thereof. And Pharaoh told them his dream, but there was none that could interpret them unto Pharaoh. Then spake the chief butler unto Pharaoh, saying, I do remember my faults this day. Pharaoh was wroth with his servants, and put me in ward in the captain of the guard's house, both me and the chief baker. And we dreamed the dream in one night, I and he. We dreamed each man according to the interpretation of his dream. And there was there with us a young man, an Hebrew, servant to the captain of the guard. And we told him, and he interpreted to us our dreams. To each man according to his dream he did interpret. And it came to pass, as he interpreted to us, so it was. Me he restored unto mine office, and him he hanged. Then Pharaoh sent and called Joseph, and they brought him hastily out of the dungeon. And he shaved himself, and changed his raiment, and came in unto Pharaoh. And Pharaoh said unto Joseph, I have dreamed a dream, and there is none that can interpret it. And I have heard say of thee that thou canst understand a dream to interpret it. And Joseph answered Pharaoh, saying, It is not in me. God shall give Pharaoh an answer of peace. And Pharaoh said unto Joseph, In my dream, behold, I stood upon the bank of the river. And behold, there came up out of the river 7 kine, fat-fleshed and well-favored, and they fed in a meadow. And behold, 7 other kine came up after them, poor and very ill-favored, and lean-fleshed, such as I never saw in all the land of Egypt for badness. And the lean and the ill-favored kind did eat up the first 7 fat kine. And when they had eaten them up, it could not be known that they had eaten them. But they were still ill-favored, as at the beginning. So I awoke, and I saw in my dream, and behold, 7 ears came up in one stalk, full and good. And behold, 7 ears withered, thin, and blasted with the east wind, sprung up after them. And the thin ears devoured the 7 good ears. And I told this unto the magicians, but there was none that could declare it to me.
And Joseph said unto Pharaoh,
The dream of Pharaoh is one. God hath shewed Pharaoh what he is about to do. The 7 good kine are 7 years, and the 7 good ears are 7 years. The dream is one. And the 7 thin and ill-favored kine that came up after them are 7 years. And the 7 empty ears blasted with the east wind shall be 7 years of famine. This is a thing which I have spoken unto Pharaoh. What God is about to do he showeth unto Pharaoh. Behold, there come 7 years of great plenty throughout all the land of Egypt. And there shall arise after them 7 years of famine. And all the plenty shall be forgotten in the land of Egypt, and the famine shall consume the land. And the plenty shall not be known in the land by reason of that famine following, for it shall be very grievous. And for that the dream was doubled unto Pharaoh twice. It is because the thing is established by God, and God will shortly bring it to pass. Now therefore let Pharaoh look out a man discreet and wise, and set him over the land of Egypt. Let Pharaoh do this, and let him appoint officers over the land, and take up the 5th part of the land of Egypt in the 7 plenteous years. And let them gather all the food of those good years that come, and lay up corn under the hand of Pharaoh, and let them keep food in the cities. And that food shall be for store to the land against the 7 years of famine which shall be in the land of Egypt, that the land perish not through the famine.
And the thing was good in the eyes of Pharaoh, and the eyes of all his servants. And Pharaoh said unto his servants,
Can we find such a one as this, a man in whom the Spirit of God is?
And Pharaoh said unto Joseph,
Forasmuch as God hath shewed thee all this, there is none so discreet and wise as thou art. Thou shalt be over my house, and according unto thy word shall all my people be ruled. Only in the throne will I be greater than thou.
And Pharaoh said unto Joseph,
See, I have set thee over all the land of Egypt.
And Pharaoh took off his ring from his hand, and put it upon Joseph's hand, and arrayed him in vestures of fine linen, and put a gold chain about his neck. And he made him to ride in the 2nd chariot which he had. And they cried before him,
Bow the knee!
And he made him ruler over all the land of Egypt. And Pharaoh said unto Joseph,
I am Pharaoh, and without thee shall no man lift up his hand or foot in all the land of Egypt.
And Pharaoh called Joseph's name Zephnath-Paaneah, and he gave him to wife Asenath, the daughter of Potipherah, priest of On. And Joseph went out over all the land of Egypt. And Joseph was 30 years old when he stood before Pharaoh, king of Egypt. And Joseph went out from the presence of Pharaoh, and went throughout all the land of Egypt. And in the 7 plenteous years the earth brought forth by handfuls. And he gathered up all the food of the 7 years which were in the land of Egypt, and laid up the food in the cities. The food of the field which was round about every city laid he up in the same. And Joseph gathered corn as the sand of the sea very much, until he left numbering, for it was without number. And unto Joseph were born 2 sons before the years of famine came, which Asenath the daughter of Potipherah, priest of On, bare unto him. And Joseph called the name of the firstborn Manasseh. For God, said he, hath made me forget all my toil, and all my father's house. And the name of the second called he Ephraim, for God hath caused me to be fruitful in the land of my affliction. And the 7 years of plenteousness that was in the land of Egypt were ended. And the 7 years of dearth began to come, according as Joseph had said. And the dearth was in all lands, but in all the land of Egypt there was bread. And when all the land of Egypt was famished, the people cried to Pharaoh for bread, and Pharaoh said unto all the Egyptians,
Go unto Joseph, what he saith to you do.
And the famine was over all the face of the earth. And Joseph opened all the storehouses, and sold unto the Egyptians. And the famine waxed sore in the land of Egypt. And all countries came into Egypt to Joseph for to buy corn, because that the famine was so sore in all lands.
All right. So we see this story here, and I mean, it's very simplistic in what it's saying, but there's so much detail in here if you actually just stop and break it down, that you can not only pull from the story, but you can also apply it to yourself. So, and we kind of went over a lot of this on last week, but we remember, you know, that we talked about how it was 2 full years from the time when Joseph had interpreted the dreams of the other 2 individuals to the time that that Pharaoh had the dream. The butler that was restored forgot about Joseph. But who didn't forget about Joseph? God. But wait a minute. Explain this to me. But it was 2 years. So the butler forgot about him, and 2 years went by. Why did God wait 2 years to give Pharaoh the dream? You can't answer that, can you? Neither can I. That's why I threw it out there. Because see, that's what we have to understand about God. See, me and you and our human, we might have waited 2 days or 2 weeks, or we would have really been, we're gonna give him we waited 2 months. Then I'm gonna pull Joseph out of there because this guy forgot about him. But wait a minute, did God already know that he was gonna forget about him? Is our God an all-knowing God? Yes. Of course he is. So God wasn't surprised. God knew what was going on, and God's testing and God's allowing us to deal with circumstances that we deem difficult is beyond our comprehension. I can't understand, and I can't tell you why God allows certain people to have certain things, why certain sicknesses don't get healed quicker or get healed at all, why certain financial and mental states don't get better, why certain relationships don't. You have to learn to just say, I have to do what? Trust God. Because a lot of things I can't tell you why. Because if I could tell you why God did it, that means I have the what? The mind of God, and I don't have that. So what we look for is what we call inspiration or revelation. If God can give us, because we can't understand it. So if you want, well, explain it to me. No, just, See, if I was to tell you that the only way you could drive your car is if you could understand every physics, every scientific, every mechanical, every engineering aspect of the car, then you can drive it. So you got to understand the gas and explosion ratio between the spark plugs and the gasoline. You got to understand that ratio. You got to understand the torque of the power steering and the hydraulics. And unless you can explain all of that, you can't drive the car. Well, a lot of us be walking because we don't. But isn't it nice that we just say, well, let me just look, you don't need to know all the background whys. Just know you get in, this is how you start the car, this is how you put it in gear, and we're going to spend a couple of months teaching you how to navigate. And once you learn that, you're ready to go. That's simplistic, right? Well, that's what God does. If God was to try to explain all the how comes, we would be just, I still don't get it. You ever have a class or subject in school that was like not a subject that you just didn't get, and no matter how many times they explain it to you, like, I still don't get it. And so a lot of times it's just like, okay, but what's the answer? The answer could be something like 8. Well, I know what 8 is. All right, but how we did all this and all of that and everything here to get to 8, I couldn't duplicate it if I had to. So then I just need you to give me what it is, and so that's what God does. God gives us inspiration and revelation, which is what we need a lot of times. And so we saw that God allowed Pharaoh to have this dream. And then after him having the dream, he called for his magicians and his wise men. Right? So we talked about that. We saw that in verse 8. And they couldn't interpret it. They were like, well, we have no idea what that means. Then the butler remembered. He says, oh, there was this guy down there, and he told us the dreams. Pharaoh called him up. But before Joseph came up, he had to do what? He had to clean himself up. Had to change his clothes, because he's getting ready to go before who?
Pharaoh.
The king. So he had to shave. Now he's down there in that dungeon. He could be down there. He ain't bathed. He ain't shaved. That's dungeon life. But when you start to move up, guess what else moves up? Your circumstances and situations. Right? Things become different. And so God brings you up to meet Pharaoh. Nothing really is changed in your circumstances. You're about to encounter a circumstance, but in the moving up, you got cleaned up and you got shaved, and now you present it to the king, to the Pharaoh. And Pharaoh tells him the dreams. The dreams about the cattle and about the corn. All right, both of them were the same. Joseph says, okay, you saw the 7 fat cow, then you saw the 7 lean cow. The lean cow ate the fat cow, but when the lean cow ate the fat cow, they were still what? Lean. Same thing with the corn. Corn came up all nice and big and fluffy and robust. 7 lean corn came up. 7 lean ate up the fluffy corn, but when it was all said and done, you couldn't even tell that they'd eaten it. So when Pharaoh told the dream to Joseph, first of all, Joseph told him that I will give you the answer, but it's not me. He said the answer comes from who? Look at verse 16. Joseph answered Pharaoh, saying, it is not in me. God shall give Pharaoh an answer of peace. All right, then Pharaoh tells him the dream. All right, and then in verse 25, Joseph says unto Pharaoh, the dream that Pharaoh has is one. This is 2 dreams you have, but both of the dreams mean what? One thing.
One dream.
All right, and he says that the 7 cattle and the 7 corn represented what? 7 years. All right, so and both of them represent. Now the fat cattle and the fat corn represent. There's going to be 7 years of what? Of plenty. You're going to have everything you plant going to grow. You're going to have everybody in the nation is going to have a green thumb. They can plant anything and it's just going to grow. All right. But then after that, you're going to have 7 years of what? Of famine. Nothing's growing. Now, what did we say that the gift that Pharaoh had, the gift that Joseph had, he had the gift of what?
Dreams.
Right?
And administration.
Administration. All right? So, his gift of administration helped him when he was in where? Potiphar's house. Allowed him to become what? Second in command in Potiphar's house. When he got thrown into the dungeon, into the jail, his gift of administration did what? Allowed him to, well, you can run this a little better. I can show you how to organize this. Next thing you know, he's second in command up there, right? And so then, I know something was, I felt something crawling on me. I don't know what it was. So now, Pharaoh calls him up and he tells Pharaoh the dream. Not only does he interpret the dream, but then, his gift of interpretation gives the answer to Pharaoh's question, what does this dream mean? Then his other gift of administration kicks in. He says, now, since we know what this dream means, let me tell you what you should do. And so he lets him know you're going to have these 7 years of plenty, and you're going to have 7 years of famine. And it's going to be grievous. Look at verse 32. And for that the dream was doubled to Pharaoh twice, it's because this thing is established, and God shall shortly bring it to pass. Now look at 33. Now therefore let Pharaoh, here's his advice, look out a man discreet and wise, and set him over the land of Egypt. Let Pharaoh do this, and let him appoint officers over the land. Look what he's doing. He's giving what? Administrative, how to take advantage of the circumstances. We know we're going to have 7 years of what? Plenty? 7 years of famine. He's giving you, now this is what you should do. And take the 5th part of the land of Egypt in the 7 years of plenty, and let them gather all the food of those good years and that is to come, and lay up the corn under the hand of Pharaoh, and let them keep food in the city. So basically he's telling them what? Stock it up. Plant everything you can and store everything you can. And then he lets them know that when the time comes, when the famine comes, then you're going to have that. So look at verse 37. And the thing was good in the eyes of Pharaoh, and in the eyes of all his servants. So not only did Pharaoh saw this, wow, this guy's got something going on here. His servants saw it. And Pharaoh said unto his servants, can we find such a one as this is, a man in whom the Spirit of God is? Look at that. you could tell that the Lord was working with who? With Joseph. Now, the Lord was working with Joseph. Did he turn a stick into a snake?
No.
Did he turn water into wine?
No.
Did he call down fire from heaven?
No.
All he did was give what? Good advice. Yes.
And the advice, he said, came from God.
The advice
He gave glory and honor to who
God.
it came from.
Exactly.
He didn't say it came from himself.
It's not me. So he's letting them know, I'm speaking to you from what I know God has given to me. I'm speaking godly advice. All right. And so that's an important aspect to it. A lot of times we think that, well, we can't be used of God unless we're doing something, miraculous. That's why you see a lot of those little crusades. First thing they want to do, they want to get somebody that can't walk. Ooh, he gonna make him walk. Or we get somebody whose leg is shorter than the other. We're gonna stretch out his leg. All them little things that, instead of just showing people how to do better, helping people to do it in, basic administrative things, health things, just wise everyday things that will make your everyday life better. This is what God is doing here. Mm-hmm. He's showing them how to make your everyday life better. But a lot of times we don't want the everyday stuff. We want the what? We want the miraculous. We want to be wild and entertained and fluffed up and all that kind of stuff. So and it goes on. It says, and Pharaoh said unto Joseph, forasmuch as God has shown thee all these things, there is none so discreet and wise as thou art. So Joseph got what? Promoted right there. Thou shalt be over my what? My house. And according to thy word shall some of my people be ruled? All. Look at that. All. And only in the throne shall I be greater than thee. And Pharaoh said unto Joseph, see, I have set thee over all the land of Egypt. And Pharaoh took off his ring. Joseph got Pharaoh's what?
Ring. Signet ring.
All right. And put it on his hand. All right. When he got, let me finish this and then I'll bring that up. He took off his ring and put it on his hand, put on his hand, and arrayed him in a vesture of fine what? Linen. And put a gold chain about his neck. Now when he got sold by his brothers took what? His coat. Took that coat and ripped it up and dipped it in blood and tricked the father with it, right? Mm-hmm. When he got lied on by Potiphar's wife, what did she snatch from him? His coat. Now, so you took all that from him, but that was because God knew that you're not going to get a coat from the family. You're not going to get a coat from your work. You're going to get a coat from the king. Mm-hmm. You're going to get a new covering. That's just like us. Mm. See, we can't come in with our own covering. Mm. Look at how good I did, or look at my family name, or look at what I was able to accomplish. We're going to get covered in what? The righteousness of the King. Mm. We're covered with the righteousness of Christ. We're going to get a new covering, a new coat. And that's what Joseph got. All right? And he came not only with the covering, but also came with the chain and the ring. All right? And he made him ride in the second chariot. So he got a new ride.
He got a new ride?
I'm telling you. That's it, man. He's going down there, man. Got this little lean going on. I said, and they cried before him and bowed the knee. So that he got what? Honor. People honored him, recognized him as he basically.
That's where people make mistakes at. See, these people honored him, but see now these people today that are leaders, they want you to worship him.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
That's where you got to watch that.
Exactly.
And even Pharaoh, he said, you will rule all over the whole land except for my throne. Mm-hmm. So you ain't higher than me.
Mm-hmm. So. Yep. All right. So now he got him a new outfit. He got him a new ride. He got him a new chariot. Then in 45, and Pharaoh called Joseph name Pithana, whatever that is, right there.
Right there.
And then gave him a wife of Athanas. All right. And so now Joseph also got what? He got a wife. All right. And the wife was from that priestly line from Egypt. And Joseph was how old? 30 years old. All right.
Man.
All right. And so in the 7 plenteous years upon the earth, brought forth in handfuls. That means that every time you turn around, you got more than what you can carry in your hand. All right. And Joseph, he did what? He did exactly what he said he was going to do. He gathered it up and so forth and so on. All right. So we know about that. And so in verse 50 it says, and unto Joseph were born what? 2 sons. Before the years of famine came. So while he was gathering up, him and his wife had 2 children. He had the first son, which is called Manasseh, and he said, because God has allowed me to forget all my toils. And then he named the second one Ephraim, because God has made him fruitful in the land of his affliction. The place where he was afflicted at is where he actually got his blessing. Sometimes we try to run away from the thing that's our issue. When God said, no, I'm going to use the thing that's your issue, that little pain in the neck, that little hard situation you got, God can turn that into your what? Blessing. Into your blessing. But a lot of times we think, well, why would God allow me to have this kind of a pain? Well, once again, can I answer that? No. Somehow or another, God knows why we need what we need. And that's all I can say. All right. It says, and the 7 years of plenteous that was in the land of Egypt were ended, and the 7 years of dearth began, according as Joseph had said. So now the 7 years of difficulty come in, and what arises? Famine and what? And hunger. There's going to come a time in our world where people are going to hunger for the things of God. They're going to want God's input, God's advice. Because see, when things are okay and you think things are wonderful and things are good, you're going on in your own power, you just think you're good. And you'll move on. And you don't have any hunger or desire for God at all. Until you start hitting starvation mode. Then all of a sudden you're like, I think I need God. All right? Hunger can do something to you. Hunger can change you around. Hunger can make you feel and do things differently. All right? That's what hunger can do. All right? So while they're in the famine was over the whole face of the earth, and Joseph opened up the storehouses, and sold unto the Egyptians, and the famine waxed sore in the land of Egypt. And all the countries came to where? To Egypt. And they had to come to Egypt, they had to deal with who? Joseph. For to buy corn, because the famine was sore in all the lands. All right. So we're going to stop there because we got some other things that we want to take care of here. But I think this is a good story.